Hello, I'm Thomas Price, a graduate of the MSc in Project Management at Leeds Beckett University, and this is a slideshow to go with my paper based around the tendency towards suboptimal operational planning. The reason for the study was really because during my time studying the MSc, it became apparent that many in text believe that projects often don't deliver on their full potential outcomes, and then this led to further observation and reading into why this is, and I think it's really due to project value being misunderstood, and there's a lot of confusion around it, and it's often linked to control and monitoring around cost and time rather than the softer realizations linked to end user quality and stakeholder realization. This may be why literature over the decades has provided us with several methodologies looking into improving processes. This is a great way to identify and explore ways to remove risk, reduce waste, reduce variance, reduce cost and resource, remove bottlenecks, and parallel working, some of which are value management, lean, Six Sigma, and theory of constraints. Although in more modern project management, it's become more widely used that we combine these approaches together, like with lean and Six Sigma, as it provides better results. Therefore, a way of identifying as many constraints as possible might mean that we combine all of these approaches to provide more reliable evidence for decision making and problem solving, and therefore allow us to accurately see what is feasible within benefits, optimization, and value within the project delivery. And as my background is in design, this has always been the norm for me, as modeling and testing to find the optimum solution for both the stakeholders, the client, the organization. It's always been a visual process that you test and test again, and this is what I wanted to look into within this paper. It became apparent from further discussion and research that visualization of data is a useful tool to collect and transform both qualitative and quantitative data, and the likes of a Gantt chart can help us enhance the information and make it more transparent and understandable. Yet within practice, many individuals don't use this as a way of visualizing complex problems, although this may be down to their lack of confidence in operational planning, the assumptions about logical sequencing, the desire to avoid potential rework, or that there's many cognitive challenges about the level of detail needed or the correct way to plan. Yet many have suggested that the use of a Gantt can help us understand the complex project data, and if we treat it with two simple aspects based around a correct work breakdown structure and the correct use of logical links between tasks, it may help benefit the decision making and the problem solving. And therefore, it may be worth putting the idea forward that we move away from this idea of planning for control and modelling to planning for modelling for analysis. This led to the aim of the study, which was to investigate the potential for latent value lost to inefficiency of planned delivery in a series of project case studies. A case study approach was selected to produce qualitative data to focus on establishing new perspective of the research problem. The re-examination of 4 case studies visualized through a Gantt would then provide new understanding of the current situation and identify waste, bottlenecks, variation, risks, which were set out in the improvement processes of literature. These findings would then allow us to base recommendations around latent value in current projects to help find optimal solutions. And finally, from this, cross-examination would allow for several hypotheses to be drawn to help answer the question of whether there is potential latent value and efficiency lost in projects. In terms of reliability, it is often seen that the value of data required is determined by the degree to which it relates to the general population. Hence, the 4 case studies chosen were taken from a broad range of current project scenarios and randomly selected through optimistic channels to allow for a higher quality of sample. Each case study was then built in Microsoft Project to create a baseline of the current situation, and then signed off by the individual who provided the data. To show the findings of the study, Case Study 3 has been selected to demonstrate. From the creation of the baseline, it is possible to show that there are several problems within the current process. There are several issues linking to waste. These are client tender review, client process of order, and awaiting meetings. This is often linked to governance and the lack of communication. There are also bottlenecks within the design and manufacturing process. This is often linked to the project office, also doing other project work at the same time. There are variations within the client revisions as it differs from what was originally tendered for, and the biggest is the risk to the organisation as they often bid for their work and there is a 4 in 1 chance of winning and the project going forward, and therefore 96 days are lost and a huge loss to resource and revenue. There are also risks linked to the other constraints within the process. These are furniture being stored and the conflict with third parties. After the identification of the constraints, it was possible to use the visual model as a created method of problem solving to test the feasibility of possible solutions. And from this, several interventions can be made. The removal of a tender process by allowing for client discount means that there's no lost revenue and no bidding for work. There's no bottlenecks based around design and manufacturing, and there's less chance of client variation. There's also new tasks adding in based around communication, which allows for information to be gathered earlier, means decisions and meetings can be granted sooner to avoid further risk. And this means that the project now takes 140 days to complete, saving 103 days and saving a lot of cash flow to the organisation. And this also meant that 1.7 projects could be completed in the same time as the current baseline, which would further increase the revenue and market share of the project organisation. And for the client, this also meant that they receive additional value, additional discount, a clearer objective from the start, and an earlier completion date. From the cross-examinations of the findings, it was clear to see that even though the projects were selected at random from different projects and organisations, they all seem to have similar constraints and improvements, which are highlighted in the tables. And it's clear that the identifications of the constraints and the solutions also highlight the importance of visualizing the Gantt for analysis to help better problem solving. The improvements suggested to each case study led to reductions in duration, percentage gains, cash flow improvements, as well as new tasks being added to optimize the current process, which also resulted in through-life value creation for each project. From the findings, several hypotheses can be drawn. The first being that modelling for analysis of the Gantt chart in projects allows for the identification of the root cause of the problem and helps build a clear problem definition. The second being that visualization can aid rational decision making as it allows complex investigation of the problem and provides data that would have been overlooked. The third, that project managers are currently underestimating the results of facilitating the visualization analysis of their current baseline, resulting in lost value adding opportunities, which may be the cause of a high rate of failures in project deliverables. And finally, that projects are vulnerable to innovation barriers, and this may be the reason that organisations are not exploiting the use of modelling tools as a way of analysing the innovation in a project plan. And finally, the paper will make several recommendations to how this may benefit project managers or project environments. Thank you for taking the time to watch and listen. I hope you enjoy the paper, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.